I didn't mean to forget her birthday. I didn't even know I remembered it until she stopped looking at me the same way. The first time I saw Elena again, it was behind the counter of the small, independent bookstore near the station. I was there to drop off a stack of proofs from the publishing house. Routine errand, nothing personal. She was sorting through a shelf of poetry anthologies, half glasses perched low on her nose, her hair tied back like she'd meant to keep it tidy, but lost interest halfway through. She didn't see me at first. I had too much time to watch her fingers trace the edge of a page before she closed the book, almost tenderly. That was Elena, doing everything quietly, as if afraid the world might overhear her thoughts. When she finally turned, her expression flickered. Surprise, then something else, something I couldn't name. Noah, she said, the way someone says a word they used to use a lot, but haven't in years. I nodded, trying too hard to sound casual. Didn't expect to see you here. I could say the same. She smiled, small, careful. You're working with Greenleaf now, right? Editorial assistant, I said, too fast. Mostly errands and coffee runs. Her eyes softened. That's how it starts. That was the thing about Elena. She had a way of turning a sentence into something heavier than it sounded. Even the simplest words carried the quiet weight of knowing too much. I set the proofs on the counter and told her they were for the owner, but she waved it off. He's at lunch. I can take them. Her nails brushed against the paper as she reached for the stack, and for half a second, my pulse felt louder than it should have. I don't even know why. Maybe it was how she looked at the manuscripts like they mattered. Maybe it was just her. We talked a little after that. Safe topics, mostly. The weather. The shop cat that wasn't really anyone's cat. She told me she worked there part-time now, said it was quieter than the university. I didn't ask why she'd left teaching. I didn't have to. There was something about her tone that said don't. But when she laughed, soft, half to herself, it pulled something loose in my chest. It wasn't flirtation. It was recognition, maybe. Like we both remembered a version of ourselves that didn't exist anymore. Then she said, "You disappeared after graduation." I tried to smile. Guess I did. She tilted her head, studying me. "You always looked like you were running from something." I was, I said before I could stop myself. Then, quieter, still am maybe. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The shop's air conditioner hummed. Outside, rain pressed against the windows. She didn't look away, and I didn't either. That silence, thick, uncertain, felt like standing on a frozen lake and hearing the ice crack beneath you. Eventually she broke it. "You should come by again. We host small readings on Fridays." Old habit of mine. I said I might. I meant I definitely would. Before I left, she tucked a stray hair behind her ear and said, "And next time, don't forget the date." I laughed, confused. "What date?" She smiled, half amused, half sad. "My birthday. Yesterday." I froze. "Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't know." She shrugged like it didn't matter. "Of course you didn't." But the way she said it, softly, like forgiveness, she didn't know me, made it matter more than I wanted to admit. I walked out into the rain without buying anything, carrying nothing but her voice in my head. And for the rest of that week, every time my phone buzzed, I caught myself hoping it was her. It never was. Elena asked if I could help her sort through old donations for the shop one Friday afternoon. She said it like it was nothing. "If you're not busy, I could use another pair of hands." I wasn't busy. I told her I'd stop by after work. The back room of the store smelled like dust and paper, the kind that clings to your clothes. Piles of books leaned against the walls like they were waiting for someone to remember them. She was already there, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely tied again, a mug of tea going cold beside her. "Careful with that stack," she warned as I came in. "The spine's probably gone." "You mean like me?" I said before thinking. She looked up, half smiling. "Still dramatic, I see." I shrugged. Editorial habit. She laughed under her breath, and something about the sound hit lower than it should have. Not loud, just enough to make the air shift between us. We worked quietly after that. The light slanted through the small window, cutting across her face in a way that made her look younger and older at the same time. Every so often, she'd make a note on a slip of paper, her handwriting neat and deliberate. I kept catching myself watching her hands, how steady they were, how they hesitated just a fraction before picking up each book, like she was afraid of breaking something fragile. At one point, she rubbed her temple and sighed. Tired? I asked. Always. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Occupational hazard of being alive too long, I suppose. There was something in the way she said it. Light on the surface, heavy underneath. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. Instead, I said, you make it sound like 45 is ancient. Fox D6, she corrected, tapping her pen against a box. And no, not ancient. Just aware. Of what? She hesitated, eyes on the window. The rain had started again, soft against the glass. Of how easily people leave, she said finally. How quietly it happens. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight with words that wouldn't come. So I just nodded and picked up another book, pretending to read the title. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. It was nothing, barely a touch, but she froze for a second, eyes flicking up to mine. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was careful. She pulled her hand back and said, you should label the poetry separately. It sells slower, but better. I nodded, even though I wasn't thinking about poetry. We finished close to closing time. The store lights were dimmed, and the world outside was the color of dusk. She locked the door, turned, and leaned against the counter. You did good work, she said quietly. Thanks. Then she looked at me. Really looked, like she was deciding something. Her lips parted as if to say more, but she didn't. Instead, she just reached out and brushed a bit of dust off my sleeve. A small, automatic gesture. I don't know why that moment felt like electricity. She said, see you next Friday, maybe. Yeah, I said, my voice lower than I meant. Maybe. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but I stayed under the awning anyway, watching her silhouette through the window, her hand still resting on the counter where mine had been moments before. The storm came earlier than forecast. Thunder rolled through the narrow street, rattling the shop's windows, and Elena frowned at the sudden dark sky. You shouldn't walk home in that, she said, half to herself. I don't mind rain, I told her. It's not the rain, she murmured, switching on the small lamp beside the register. It's the lightning. Always feels too close. We were both lingering long past closing. The shop was quiet, except for the sound of rain drumming against the glass and the faint hum of the old refrigerator in the back room. The city outside had disappeared, blurred into streaks of gray. She offered tea, then made it without waiting for my answer. The kettle hissed, and she stood by the counter, her back to me. The light caught the edge of her hair, highlighting the faint silver that threaded through the brown. I should have left after finishing the inventory. Instead, I found myself moving slower, stretching out tasks that didn't need to be stretched. When she handed me a mug, our fingers brushed again. This time she didn't pull back as quickly. Thank you, I said. You always thank me, she replied, faint smile. Even when you don't have to. It's a bad habit. Bad habits are usually comforting, she said softly. We stood there for a while, neither of us drinking our tea. The shop smelled like rain and worn paper. She leaned against the counter, staring at the storm. I watched the way her shoulders tightened whenever thunder broke too loud. After a long silence, she said, you ever wonder what people say about you after you leave a room? I looked at her. Sometimes. She nodded. Me too. I used to care. Now I just hope they remember I was kind. Something about that made my chest ache. They will, I said quietly. Her eyes met mine then, steady, unflinching. The kind of look that made everything else fade. That was the moment something almost shifted. My body knew it before my mind did. The air tightening, heartbeat out of rhythm. I could have said something right then, something honest. That I thought about her too much. That she made every silence feel charged. That I didn't know how to stand this close without wanting to reach out. But her phone rang. She flinched, pulling back like someone had opened a door between us. The name flashed briefly on the screen before she silenced it. I only caught part of it. Daniel. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the phone. Then she turned it face down. Sorry, she said. Old friend. I nodded, pretending not to notice how her hands trembled. Outside, the rain got heavier. She sighed and set her mug aside. You should probably stay until it calms down. I don't mind, I said. She smiled faintly, But her voice was quieter now. That's what worries me. For a long moment, the storm was the only thing between us. When the thunder finally softened, she stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, faint and familiar. Her hand twitched as if she might touch my arm, but didn't. Instead, she said, "You'll catch a cold if you go now." And before I could answer, she reached past me to switch off the lamp, her sleeve brushing my wrist, her breath warm near my ear. I didn't move. Neither did she. Then the light went out, and the space between us filled with everything we didn't say. The next Friday, the shop felt different. Not colder, not quieter, just different, like the air itself had learned to listen. Elena was rearranging a display table when I came in, her movements brisk but distracted. She didn't look up right away. "You're early," she said, her tone light, deliberate. I didn't have anywhere else to be. That earned me a glance. Not a long one, but enough to see the hesitation flicker behind her eyes before she looked away again. We worked in near silence. The radio hummed softly in the background, an old song with a voice that sounded too tired to keep singing. I tried to focus on sorting the books, but the distance between us felt like a lie we both agreed to tell. Halfway through cataloging the new arrivals, she dropped her pen. It rolled under the counter. When she bent down to grab it, I did too. Our hands collided in the half-dark under the counter, and we both froze. Her breath hitched. Mine did too. She pulled back first, straightening up quickly. "Sorry," she murmured. "It's fine." But it wasn't. Nothing about it was fine anymore. We stood there, the silence too thick, too alive. She turned away, but her voice came quieter than before. "Noah, what are we doing?" It wasn't an accusation. It was a whisper, soft and heavy, the kind that finds every space inside you. I didn't answer right away. I didn't have words that made sense. "I don't know," I said finally. "I keep trying to make it make sense." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "And does it?" "No," she nodded, still facing the window. That's what I thought. Her reflection in the glass looked distant, like someone standing at the edge of a decision and trying not to fall. "I'm too old for this," she said, not looking at me. "For what?" "This confusion," she said softly. "This," she waved a hand vaguely between us. "This space that keeps shrinking." I wanted to tell her that it wasn't about age or rules or the years between us. That it wasn't confusion, it was clarity, terrifying and bright. But I didn't. She turned then, and her eyes were damp but steady. "You're young, Noah. You'll forget me. You're supposed to." "That's not fair," I said. "It's realistic." Her voice cracked just slightly at the end, and it broke something in me. We stood there for what felt like forever. No words, no movement. Just the sound of rain returning, light at first, then steadier. "Finally," I said, "you keep saying I'll forget you. But what if I already tried and couldn't?" Her lips parted. For a second, she looked like she might say something back, something final. But she didn't. Instead, she took a step closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin, and whispered, almost to herself, "That's the problem, Noah. I believe you." The shop was closed that evening, but her car was still outside. The lights inside were dim, just the amber glow from a desk lamp in the back. I hesitated at the door before knocking, once, lightly. She looked up from the counter when I entered. Her hair was loose this time, falling over one shoulder. A half-open box sat in front of her, filled with old envelopes and photographs. "I didn't mean to intrude," I said. She shook her head. "You didn't. I just couldn't sleep, so I came here." There was something in her voice, fragile, like a thread stretched too tight. I walked closer, and she slid one of the photographs toward me. It was old, grainy, faded at the edges. A man and a woman, maybe in their 30s, smiling under a tree. The man looked familiar, though I couldn't place him right away. "That's my husband," she said quietly. "Was." I didn't speak. She kept her eyes on the photo. "He died 7 years ago. Heart failure. Quick. One day we were arguing about groceries, and the next I was standing over a hospital bed, wondering if I'd told him I loved him enough." The air shifted, heavier, slower. "I'm sorry," I said, though the words felt small. She smiled faintly, like she'd heard that 1,000 times. "I thought I was done missing him." But sometimes, when you speak, she stopped, shaking her head. You have his tone. That low certainty. It's ridiculous, I know. It's not. She gave me a look that hovered between gratitude and guilt. You remind me of who I was back then, before everything got quiet. Her fingers brushed the photo's corner, then stilled. You asked me once why I left teaching. I couldn't walk past his old lecture hall anymore. He used to sit in the back when I taught. Said he liked hearing how I thought. Something inside me twisted. Elena, I began, but she cut in gently. Don't. Please. She exhaled shakily. I don't want you to think I see him when I look at you. I don't. But sometimes I catch myself wanting to, and that's worse. There was no defense against that honesty. I felt it hit, deep and clean. We sat in silence for a long time. The rain outside was thin now, almost delicate. I watched the lamplight flicker against her face, the tiredness there, the restraint. Finally, I asked, do you still love him? She considered that for a while. Then no, not in the way I did. But grief doesn't end. It just changes shape. Sometimes it looks like nostalgia. Sometimes it looks like you. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. She reached for the photo again, then stopped, her hand hovering over it like she was about to touch a wound. And then she whispered, barely audible. Maybe that's why this scares me, Noah. Because I don't know if I'm remembering him or beginning to forget. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was passing by the shop late on a Sunday evening, long after closing. The lights were still on. Through the glass, she sat at one of the reading tables. No books, no tea, just stillness. I almost kept walking. I should have, but my feet didn't listen. When I stepped inside, the bell over the door gave a small, fragile sound. She looked up, not startled, just quietly resigned, as if she'd known I would come eventually. No customers today, she said softly. You're late. I didn't know I was expected. Her lips curved slightly. You always are. I sat across from her. The silence that followed wasn't strained anymore. It felt lived in, familiar. The kind of quiet two people earn. There were lines of tiredness beneath her eyes, and her voice had a softness that didn't need defending. She said, I thought a lot about what I told you. About him. About how unfair it was to you. It wasn't unfair, I said. It was honest. Honest doesn't make it right. Maybe not, I said. But it makes it real. She looked at me for a long moment, like she was weighing something invisible. Then she asked, why do you keep coming back? I don't know how to stop. Her expression flickered, part pain, part warmth. You'll have to learn. I tried, I said quietly. It didn't work. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Outside, dusk deepened into blue. I keep thinking, she murmured, that this, whatever this is, can't go anywhere. I know. And still, she said, meeting my gaze, you're here. I am. Something in her chest seemed to loosen at that. She exhaled, eyes glistening but steady. Do you know what scares me most? I shook my head. That I'll start needing this. Her confession landed gently, but hit hard. I felt the words settle between us like something fragile, but true. I leaned forward slightly, not enough to close the space, just enough to let her know I heard her, that I understood. We stayed like that, breathing the same quiet air, both waiting for the other to look away. Neither of us did. Then she reached across the table, fingertips brushing mine. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even a full touch, just the ghost of one. But it was enough. I turned my hand over, let her fingers rest there. Warm, trembling a little. The kind of trembling that comes from holding back, not from fear. No words. No promises. Just two people who had run out of reasons to keep pretending. After a while, she whispered, you should go before it gets late. I said, but didn't move. She didn't pull her hand away. And in that small, impossible moment, between restraint and surrender, I realized it wasn't about forgetting her birthday or her past or anything else we'd done wrong. It was about remembering this, how something so quiet could still feel like the beginning of everything. It's been 6 months since I stopped going to the shop. Not because I wanted to, but because we both knew that if I kept showing up, we'd lose whatever quiet truth we'd managed to build. Some things only survive in distance. I still pass by sometimes. The window display changes with the seasons, New paperbacks, old poetry, a vase of fake tulips that's somehow always crooked. I never go in. I don't have to. The light through that glass already feels like memory. The last time we spoke, it was simple. She said, "You taught me something I didn't think I could still learn." I asked, "What's that?" She smiled. That same almost laugh she used when she didn't trust her voice. That wanting doesn't have to lead to having. It can just be. At the time, I didn't fully get it. I do now. Because she was right. Not everything real needs to be owned, or finished, or named. Some connections live best in the quiet corners of your life. The ones that hum softly when you think you've forgotten them. I still hear her voice sometimes. The way she said my name like it was both a question and an answer. I still remember the smell of tea and dust, the tremor in her laugh, when she almost let herself be happy again. And I've changed too. I used to think love had to be loud to matter, declarations, promises, big gestures. But she taught me that sometimes love is restraint. Sometimes it's choosing silence instead of a word that might ruin what's left. I see that now in smaller things. The way I listen more and speak less. The way I look for meaning in pauses instead of explanations. The way I carry the people I've lost, not as grief, but as proof I once felt something worth missing. Elena once told me she hated birthdays. Said they reminded her of everything she hadn't done yet. I didn't understand back then, but maybe she just meant time, how it sneaks by, how it changes what we're brave enough to want. I think of her every year around that same date. I don't text, don't call. Just sit with the memory for a while. It's enough. Because forgetting her birthday wasn't really the mistake. The mistake would have been never meeting her at all. And maybe, in some quiet way, we both got what we needed. She learned she could still be seen. And I learned that some people don't leave, they just stay differently. So, if you're listening, wherever you are, thank you, Elena. For the rain, for the silence, for the part of me that still looks for you in every warm light behind a bookstore window. Beat, if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?